Today's episode, we are interviewing Don Owens, and we're going to discuss the impact of teamwork and what an effect team can do for your business.
Welcome to the Home Service Toolbox, a podcast dedicated to helping home service providers. Every Wednesday, your hosts, Brian and Olivia, will interview leading experts in both the home service field as well as companies who support the small business owner. Our guests will help you nail down what will and what won't work to grow your business. Whether you're on a job site or taking a break, there's no better time to sharpen your small business skills.
Well, I'm Brian, and I'm the host of today's podcast, joined by Olivia. How are you today?
I'm great, Brian. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. It's nice to have some sunshine in the area.
Yeah, I know. I feel like winter's finally at its lull. Hopefully no more button-downs and turtlenecs in our future, and we can finally move on to better things.
Well, you say that, but you know how North Carolina weather is.
I know. Snow last week, flowers this week.
Yep.
I'm just still adapting.
The trees are already budding. Well, we're not here to talk about snow or trees. It is the 21st episode of our Home Service Toolbox show, and we'd like to welcome Don Owens of the Hamilton Group Funding to the podcast. Don is a trusted mortgage lender of 15 years from the Triad area of North Carolina. He's consulted thousands of home buyers to make their American dream come true today. So, Don, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
Well, we're happy you are here. So I guess to kind of kick things off, we always like to ask, what kind of got you into this field of business? What compelled you to enter the mortgage field?
Well, that's a good question. I actually used to be a partner in a publication, and it was very long hours. I worked a little too much and decided to get out of the business. And one day I was out talking with one of my previous customers, and he said, I think you would be really good at the mortgage business. You're personable, you're honest, and you're easy to get along with. You should give it a shot. So I looked into it, and it seemed like something that would be an interesting career field to make people's dreams come true every day. So I dove in. That was in 2003. Haven't looked back.
Wow, that's awesome. I mean, what a great way to use your talents and your passions and just transfer that to a whole different field. That's really cool.
So Don, I met you, I don't know, it's been probably 5 or 6 years at a networking group, and networking groups have been very important to your success. But as part of your business, we're going to be talking about team today, and I remember just following a very unique story. Prior to the podcast, in the pre-show, you mentioned a very specific date. What is that date, and why is that date even important to you?
June 15th, 2018, I had a massive brain hemorrhage, and I had to have emergency brain surgery to save my life. And over the next couple of months, I had another surgery which removed the issue that caused the problem in the first place. Not the brain. I kept the brain. But
Maybe sometimes you don't feel like you have, right?
Exactly. I had something called an AVM, or arterial venous malformation. It was removed and removed the issue of it ever happening again, or the risks of it ever happening again, which is a great thing. But during that recovery, my team kept my business operating, and we didn't skip a beat. In fact, when I did come back to work over 6 months later, we had finished the year, our best year in the history of the business for us, and my team and I.
I mean, it's incredible to be able to have so much trust in people and be able to come back to that team. But certainly, you didn't build that team overnight.
No.
You said you started in 2003. So what was something that you look back on that you did when you were thinking about building your business and your team that allowed your team to have the success that they did when this happened?
Well, that's a good question. When I first started in the business, I did just like a lot of people do in the business, where it was me. I was a solo loan officer, and I had a processor or a processing service that I used to help me with my processing. And then I just decided that I wanted more control. Well, more control meant making some investments. And so, I hired team members who were my employees, and then I trained them to operate the way I liked to operate. And over time, I expanded from just myself and a processor to some additional support staff. And then that support staff, I recognized pretty quickly, could handle additional volume. So then I started bringing more loan officers and sales reps to help me build the business. And now we have an assortment of leadership positions that are on my team, and then these are producing managers. And then I have another 7 loan officers on my team. So we've got a pretty rock star team at this stage, and we're doing really well.
What was that one thing that you look back and just think, wow, like, the team wouldn't be what it is if you hadn't done this? I mean, it sounded like, the structure that you had in place, teaching them, some of the things from your own knowledge. But, besides that, anything that you kind of attest to, so our listeners are like, okay, I'm a one-man show or even a 2-man show, and I'm trying to figure out how to scale.
Well, one of the things that I think is really important in any type of leader position is you have to be humble. And I've always looked for people who were better than me in some regard. So if you can surround yourself with a team that have skills beyond your own, then you really start to expand the knowledge base in the organization that you're running, and you step it up a notch. So I believe that, and I've really tried to make sure that I'm continuously upgrading our team and the knowledge our team has by investing a lot in training. I honestly think I spend a significant amount of investment in my team on training and making sure that they're upgrading their skills constantly, and it makes a difference.
That's awesome. I mean, training is definitely fundamental, but as obviously the leader for your company, what kind of values do you think you've taken pains to instill within your team members over the years that you think carried them in your absence?
Sure. Well, speed and efficiency is one important thing. I want the team to be on it, and for the most part we are. Doing the right things for the right reasons, just taking the order-taker mentality out of the mortgage business. Someone submits a loan application for a specific loan product, that customer is not the expert. And it's important for the loan officer or the team member who's working with that customer to help guide them along to where they make the best choice. And you take more of an advisory role rather than an order-taking mentality where you're just taking the loan application and spitting out a loan estimate based on what was requested, because sometimes the customer is going to benefit significantly more by your knowledge. And so, my team does that very well.
It's incredible. I mean, just being able to, I think so many times when a person is, a homeowner and they're looking for assistance with whatever they need, whether it's a mortgage, a loan, or, they need, some plumbing issue fixed.
Sure.
They're bringing in the person to be able to fix that, and they're expecting expert information. And if someone's not willing to be beyond that order taker mentality, as you said, it's going to limit you from being able to really help people in the way that they want. I mean, funny story, my one of my oldest sons, he was buying a car, and this is his first time, and so he wasn't really listening to my advice, whatever. And so I was like, just act like you don't know anything when you go into a business. I always say, be the dumbest person in the room so you can get the help you need. He's like, well, I don't want to be taken advantage of. I was like, well, if you find quality people to get your support from, the person on the other side is literally doing this 24/7, and they're the experts. So it's okay to rely on them to be able to do that job.
Absolutely. Well, I've seen customers come to us who've been turned down for loans because they've asked for something specific and at multiple lending institutions, and rather than the loan officer becoming the advisor and looking at the overall situation, they just have declined the customer for what they requested because they didn't qualify for it. Well, they're not the expert. We're supposed to be the experts. So, I had one of the classic examples of that I talked about to my team and other professionals. A customer came to me and they'd been turned down by multiple lending institutions. They wanted to put $100,000 down on a house, and they were told that their debt-to-income ratio was too high. I looked at his loan application. I noticed that he had a bank account with USAA. I asked him one question: "Are you a veteran?" He said, "Yes." I said, let's scrap the plan that you had, take $70,000 of that $100,000, pay off all your debt. Then let's do 100% financing for the property. Bam, that's what we did. Approved him, we closed on the home. It saved him about $1,600, $1,700 a month in payments. Why was he being declined at the other lending institutions? Because they were only looking at the scenario as presented by the customer.
Wow, that's crazy. I mean, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And I mean, as a customer, you don't realize how heavily you depend on your service provider to be the guide,
Sure.
to advise you. And as someone who, eventually will embark down this road, hearing someone who places that value and takes ownership and wants to advise and counsel their customers, I mean, that's so reaffirming that, you're not going to go into something blind. It's a partnership. It's not just being misled or guided. It's very
Sure.
much 50-50 coming to the table.
Yeah,
so that's
and
tremendous.
you need to have the loan officer, the lender needs to be the expert in the room. Occasionally you will have a loan officer apply for a mortgage loan, but it's a very, very rare occasion that occurs.
Well, looking at your business now, you fast forward, 15, 16 years you've been doing this. What is one thing that you wish you knew now that you did not know in 2003?
You mean, what did I wish I knew then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do
I
you
think I understood.
I haven't had all my coffee yet, so.
I think it goes back to what I was saying before. I learned to be the advisor. Early on, I think I tried to, just make the customers happy by providing what they requested. And, as time went on, I realized, I really have to be the one who has the knowledge and to be able to coach and guide and look at the whole picture. I remember a few years ago when I was looking at the whole picture, not just the loan application, meaning not just the loan. I was looking at actually a friend's personal transaction, and I realized that they didn't have enough life insurance to cover the home that they were buying and the fact that they had multiple children. So I went into this discussion advisory mode, and we talked about that. Like, how can we best make sure you're taken care of rather than just looking at the transaction. Let's not be transactional here. Once I learned to not be transactional and become more of an advisor in the business, I became much better at my job, because whenever I was going to learn something, I was learning specifically to become a better advisor, to be able to coach my customers along, and even my realtor partners and my builder partners. How can I help best guide customers and the people I know in the industry to make the right choices. And I had to learn that over a long period of time.
So interesting how that's a very different approach to the very sales approach. I mean,
Sure.
it's sales. Advising is sales, I believe, but it's not.
I'm so glad you said specifically that, because that is something I talk about a lot in my business. You do not have to sell mortgage loans. A customer is already, they want the money. You don't have to sell them anything. And when someone shifts into sales mode, they've lost the customer. It really is about giving guidance.
Right, because that mentality, I think, with sales is just pushing it and sometimes edging the customer towards what's not always in their best interest and taking a step away from that perspective. I mean, it's getting ultimately what you want for them and what they want for them, even though they might not originally think that's what's best. It then later switches that perspective. So that's really neat that you're able to change that sales mentality.
Sure. Well, it becomes less of a transactional business and becomes more of a, where a customer will come back to you multiple times over a long period of time. I'm helping a customer now. I believe it's our 5th or 6th transaction in just 4 or 5 years, because they trust me. They know I'm going to give them good guidance and do the right thing for them. If you're just transactional, then you're just trying to make commission.
Right. What do you think, when you meet with your customers, is the most important piece of advice you can give them throughout this journey?
One, it's important to follow the guidance, because it can make a big difference. If someone needs to tweak some, pay down some credit cards or that type of thing so that it boosts their score just enough so that their interest rate drops, it can save a fortune over a long period of time. When buying a home, this is important. You cannot make up time lost at the beginning of the transaction at the end of the transaction. Okay? So those first couple of weeks are essential to close on time. The delays typically in my business are the customer and their documentation. Second is the appraisal, and third is getting the title work on time. Sometimes you order appraisal and it takes 2 weeks, or you order the title and it'll take 2 weeks or 3 weeks for that matter, just depending on how busy everyone is. So on the front end, if we get all the documentation quickly at the beginning from the customer, we can move the process along very quickly once the appraisal and the title come in. And I can't stress that enough. The front end of the transaction and how swiftly things move will dictate how quickly the home purchase especially closes.
With a home service provider, there's typically, if you're having some work done on your house, there's typically other variables that impact that. And it sounds like for your industry, you've really honed in on what those other variables are, and you've built a process to that. What would you say to someone that is, because unfortunately this industry is notorious for never getting anything done on time, and not the mortgage industry, but just the home service industry.
Well, the mortgage industry can be recognized as that as well.
Earlier you mentioned speed and efficiency,
sure.
But what are some steps to get that speed and efficiency that could kind of be applied across the board to other businesses?
Sure. Well, identify the delays and then put steps in place to make sure that you can push past those delays as quickly as possible. Like I said, I know that the 3 major delays in our business are: start with documentation, second is the appraisal, third is the title. It's almost always those 3 things that hold up the transaction. So what we do when we get a purchase contract in from to start the process, we send the disclosures to the customer. We let them know as soon as you sign these, we're going to order your appraisal and your title right away, so that we can get that process started, because they take the longest. Our goal is to make sure that you have all of your documentation in by the time that appraisal and title come back. So, and then we make sure that there's constant updates to the customer and to the realtors and everybody in the transaction, so that everybody's moving in the same direction to land safely at the closing table on the closing date.
So it sounds like, you really spend some time thinking about what those pain points are and
Sure.
those delays are, and actually identifying the delays, calling them what they are, and then having things to surround that delay to, help move that thing along.
Yeah.
I know that's been really helpful for our own business, but I'm sure it's going to be helpful for others.
Well, I used to manage restaurants, and I learned a lot about being prepared from a chef that I worked with. And I had a couple of operations that I ran for him, and one day he walked in, and I had cut labor, so I was down to just a few people in the location. And he said, "What happens if you have to leave right now? What if I have to pull you out of here to go to another location?" The business can't operate itself. You always need to make sure that you're staffed for business. Now, I learned a lot from that, and I've taken that throughout every business I've done since then. And that's part of my success with Hamilton Group Funding, is making sure that I always have the staff to handle the business that comes in, because you never know when you're going to get a surge of business. And you can get an influx of loan applications. You've got to jump on it and knock them out and give the best service you possibly can. You can't do that if you're a one-man show. You just can't. It's not going to happen. But that goes with pretty much any type of business. Sure, you've got to manage costs, but you also have to manage efficiency and be prepared for business so you can handle it.
Wow. I think, that was a lot of great tidbits of information, and it sounds like you guys also put a lot of value into your customer service and being able to be open and communicate with your clients. What do you think is the thing that you place the most value on when it comes to customer service in your business, besides advising, of course?
Sure. Well, the advising and communication. Communication is the big thing. In fact, we have an update system that communicates with our. This is something I was intimately involved in helping tailor to the way I wanted to operate my business. Mm-hmm. And so 16 points throughout the transaction, the customer, the buyer's agent, and even the seller's agent will be notified of updates throughout the transaction. And that just keeps everybody informed, because the bottom line is, when you're borrowing a couple $100,000 or you're buying a house and it's your dream, you just want to know what's going on. Mm-hmm. And so if we've set it up to where these notifications are automated, as soon as a milestone is moved, appraisal comes in, for example, or the appraisal is ordered, we push that button, bam, everybody's notified immediately. In fact, sometimes, I'll be out at a business or something like that, and I'll get a ding on my phone, I'll look down and I'll say, "Oh, the appraisal's been ordered on such and such." So I'm notified at the exact moment everybody else is as well. If I'm out, meeting with realtors or builders or whatever I'm doing a podcast.
Well, I think that's so interesting, because, part of what we do to help businesses is automate things. And I think that's extremely critical for our listeners, because if you're saying the same thing over and over, and you have not tried to automate that process. Now, automation doesn't mean that you become a robot by any stretch of the means.
Sure.
But you've got to be able to personalize your automation to be able to provide that level of communication, because, in today's world, everyone wants to know things now. It's just, even down to the prime, now you get a picture when it's on your doorstep. Mm-hmm. It's impacting everything that we do.
I've seen a significant improvement in our business and our sales as we focused on those communication pieces. This is something that in my operation, we used to do this manually. Manually. So all of those 16 points of updates, we used to do those manually. It took forever, and it was very expensive.
And that was before, everything with digital. Having, getting digital files, and I'm sure you probably still struggle getting the files that you need, but when you guys send all that, all your bank statements and everything, you just go to your bank and download it and press a button.
Well, and now these days we have the way our origination system works. A customer can go in and they can set up their account, and kind of like Mint and some of those different services, it'll import the documents into the loan file. So I'll literally open a loan file for the first time, and the bank statements are already in there.
Wow.
Because it's all imported, and even the verification of employment. So when you get a pre-approval on the front end, it's like everything can even be verified already if the customer has taken those steps to opt into those services. It can really speed up the entire process. So any type of business that you have, it can benefit with focusing on communication. That's been a huge hit and win for us, and the more we focus on communication, whether it's automated or even direct follow-up with a telephone call or text or even email, all of those pieces of communication make a big difference to the customer experience, and the customer experience is the most important part of bringing in customers, repeated customers over time.
We're going to take a quick break to hear from one of our sponsors, but when we return, we're going to discuss the importance of some of the time management, continue to dive into some of the teamwork and the role that they play in your business.
Throughout our podcast, you'll hear us discuss a variety of marketing tools, but one of our favorites is Google My Business. The exclusive features Google My Business has to offer are a fundamental part of growing your business and launching a successful marketing campaign. Do you want to learn how to unlock all the secrets of Google My Business and grow your customer base? Check out our free webinar, Unlock the Secrets of Google My Business, under newagency.com/unlock. That is nuagency.com/unlock.
Well, before the break, we talked about how advising homeowners through significant financial challenges through customer service, and we talked about the importance of a team and the importance of communication. And so we're going to dive into maybe talking about some overcoming the obstacles within your business. And so we've got Don Owens here today, and if you just are catching us, definitely go back to the beginning part of the conversation to be able to hear some of the tidbits and even just a personal story that really tied into the conversation of teamwork. But maybe what would you say is the biggest obstacle that you've overcome in your business, and how did you address it?
Well, good question. One of the biggest challenges is always in leadership is dealing with the different personalities that you have to work with every day. And everybody's different, and everybody responds differently, even to the exact same type of guidance. So navigating that it can be a significant challenge. But just as a manager or leader of an organization, it's essential to be humble, be open to those differences, and embrace them.
That's great. Do you think, over the years being a leader and being in a leadership role, do you have any leadership tips or advice for our listeners who might be thinking about getting into their own business, or who might have trouble managing their own leadership styles and skills?
Well, it is important to listen as much as it is to lead. And part of being a good leader is being a good listener. Pay attention. Pay attention to your staff. Take good care of your people. If you take good care of your people, they will take good care of your customers. Now, not everyone is going to be happy. In fact, you can go the extra mile to make an employee happy, and they just might not be happy, not only with where they work with you, but the next job they go to, or the one after that. But it's really about being a good leader. It's essential to be a good listener and be humble enough to not be the best at everything in the room. like I had said earlier, surrounding myself with people who are better than I am in certain regards is essential. You know, I have loan officers who I think are better loan officers than I am. I have team members who are definitely better at customer service than I am. You know, they're a little less aggressive than I am, maybe a little kinder in their delivery. You know, their bedside manner might be a little nicer. I'm a kind of a cut it to the chase kind of guy. You know, so you have to be able to balance all those things.
Sounds like a really great, diverse group of team members you have, which is awesome. So you guys can each bring something to the table, and I'm sure you learn as much from them as they do from you every day, which is great.
Yes.
So, you know, running and leading and owning your own business, what's the greatest thing about that? You know, because I'm sure some of our listeners are, you know, maybe either thinking about starting their own business, or maybe they're in the business right now and they feel like, man, I need to get out of this. So it sounds like you enjoy what you do. So
Sure.
what allows you to just enjoy being in the position you are?
Well, I should first say that I don't own Hamilton Group Funding. I run 2 branches in the Triad area and in North Carolina. We are a regional mortgage bank based out of Sunrise, Florida,
Okay.
and I have a great little niche carved out here in the Triad with this company. But I am responsible for 2 branches, and I have quite a large team. It's a wonderful thing.
Right. Well, I mean, just so as the manager, I mean, you obviously have flexibility and things that, you know, that go along with, as you know, even the challenges. So what are some of those things that you can take advantage of, that you are glad that you are what you are in this?
Sure. Well, I like being a daddy. I've got 2 little ones, and you know, I the way I run my business gives me the opportunity to not have to spend every night making telephone calls and checking emails and all that stuff. And you know, I go home and I turn my phone off and I pick up my children, and you know, I make them dinner, and you know, I love that. It's a great thing. It wasn't like that early on, but now the way I operate the business, it works pretty well for me to be able to focus on being a father when I get home.
That's awesome. What do you think, when you first started off, was one of the biggest learning lessons you had, like within the first couple of years of starting off as a manager and diving into this?
Well, I've managed businesses of some sort since 1987, so I've been a leader for a long time in different types of businesses, but in the mortgage business specifically, one of the bigger challenges was, you know, the companies that in the upper management that I've worked with in different places tend to, and even at Hamilton, tended, not so much now, but at one time, the focus was more on just having salespeople, okay, and for the numbers, you know, the units, and really I had to step back on that a little bit, and it became less important to have people with massive experience as it did to have people who I could train. If I could teach somebody how to do things right and they did it right every time, it didn't matter if they had 2 years in experience in the business, because they were valuable to me. Meaning that they could support my customers and do a better job than someone who thought they knew it all and didn't want to try to learn how to do their job better. You know, unfortunately, in every business, and any leader out there in any type of business should be able to recognize this. In any type of business, there are people who've maybe been in the business a little too long, and they no longer, you know, they've stopped trying to learn and do a better job. You know, they think I've got it, and you don't ever have it. If you lose the mindset of continuously improving on your job and being the very best you can, then someone else will pass you by. And you know, that's just something that I've learned over the years. I had to, you know, kind of in one way kind of explain to the you know, top of our company that I really wanted to be able to bring in people that I could train how to do things right from the get-go, even if they did not have a book of business. And that I've won that game. That's worked out really well for me. So even though I have a lot of team members who only have a few years of experience, they do a wonderful job and they do it right.
Well, I think that's a really great mindset to have, because the more I learn about marketing and the home service industry, experience doesn't necessarily equal skill and
Right.
knowledge. It's about having that open-mindedness. It's about having that balancing act, because like you said, you can know everything, but you don't necessarily know everything. And there's so many people who are eager to get into this business and want to break out, and you being able to give them that opportunity, I'm sure, makes them even more compelled to work twice as hard as someone who's been in the business for 5 or 7 years, you know, having that opportunity to prove their worth. That's going to help create that awesome team mentality, and I'm sure has really helped make your team the team it is today and really strengthen those relationships with you.
Yeah, and as a leader, you have to be willing to invest in your people and invest in their training and development, and so I do that. And you know, there's a couple of schools that I've put my team through, and I've had a lot of success with that. It does cost a little bit of money, but at the end of the day, you know, they come out the other side and they're confident that you know, they can do a good job, and they've got the knowledge to be able to, you know, work through the business.
Well, last question before we wrap up. So what would you say is one piece of advice that you could give someone in the home service industry that would allow them to do their job better and serve their customers and their homeowners?
Well, I guess that goes back to what I was saying before, is be humble, you know, and be open to someone that works with you having a little more knowledge than you have. You don't have to be the best. You have to surround yourself with the best.
That's great. I mean, you are nothing without a team, and
That's right.
you know, a lot of home service businesses are a one man or woman show, but I mean, in some ways, if you don't have a team, I don't want to step on any toes, you may not even really have a business. You're just doing a job, and so you know, I think it's important to, if you're interested in building a business, growing something, that you've got to surround yourself with great people.
Yeah, and you can start with 1, and then 2, and then 3, and then 12.
Right.
You know, at some point, if you can step away and you know, kind of work on your business rather than in your business, it'll start to blossom.
Well, Don, I really appreciate you coming on the show today. You've shared some incredible insights. It sounds like, you know, just even some of the things that you were saying, just like that last statement of, you know, working in the business, working on the business, not in the business. And, you know, obviously that you've gotten that from your own education. You've gotten that from reading and studying and following others. And I think that's a great summary. You know, we talked about communication. We talked about family, how important family is, and how the family suffers if you don't have a system around you and a team around you to support yourself. And so thank you for being on the show.
Sure. Thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. We always learn something new every week, and today is no exception. And I specifically love your sales approach and mentality. I think that's really refreshing, and not enough people have that, and it's really great to hear. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well, on next week's episode, we're going to interview Andy McCowan, the owner of Caroline Custom Homes. He's actually one of our clients, and so we're really excited to have him on the podcast. And we're going to unpack how personalization and adaptability are important for customer service experiences.
Yeah, and before we wrap up, please guys, if you like our podcast, leave us some reviews. Tune in every Wednesday to watch us, and you can also check us out on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
Break time's over, but thanks for listening to the Home Service Toolbox. Keep your marketing toolbox up to date by subscribing to our podcast. We'll be here every Wednesday, hammering out solutions to help your business.
3, 2, 1.